What is up, humans and mutants alike? My name is Kyle. We are going back through our old catalog and re uploading them onto YouTube in what we are calling Podcast of X Classics. So enjoy.
Welcome back to Podcast of X. My name is Kyle, and I'm with Danny, and I am looking at the back of his head. I'm looking at him like in real life because he is here. He is present, and this is a real life podcast. No Skype is involved, except for the fact that we still are using Skype, but let's ignore that.
We're still doing what would be known as a traditional podcast, where we are actually people in the same room having a conversation.
Yes.
They're like all those contemporary podcasts where no one ever sees each other at all.
Or talks to each other.
No one even knows each other.
Yeah.
Who am I even podcasting with? That's the question everyone should be asking. Oh, geez.
But yeah, we completed House of X and Powers of X, and now we are moving into Dawn of X, starting with X-Men issue number 1. Are you excited for this?
This is the beginning of the end that we started.
Yes.
There's the new era. We're now transitioning into what groundwork has been laid by Hickman with House of X and Powers of X, and this is now the new X-Men world that everyone has to branch out in. Not only is he writing new stories continuing from that point, but there's a whole litany of other people who have jumped on board and are writing just alongside him the new mythos that they're being set forth with.
Yes, exactly. But not this one. This one is all Hickman. Hickman's still writing, still at the helm. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens to these characters. We're introduced to a couple characters that kind of throw me off in this, but we'll dive into that in a little bit. But yeah, you want to get into it? You ready?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's dive into this bad boy.
So yes, X-Men issue number 1.
The truth. Son, how can you believe...
Don't ever call me that. For 20 years I dreamed about my father.
So, Danny, why don't you lead us into this issue? Since we're at your house, you could be the host of issue X-Men issue number 1. Take the helm, lead us, guide us.
Well, I guess starting it off, I mean, we get a nice throwback where it brings us kind of full circle to where it all started with, especially since the focus here is on Cyclops. So we're leading in with like kind of a nice throwback and nod to like when Cyclops first got his ruby quartz glasses from Charles and actually gets to utilize his sight again without the fear of injuring people around him in a more devastating way.
Yes.
He actually gets to throw on his glasses and open his eyes and see the world in bright red for the first time. And that's a nice little nod back to the original mythos and how Charles and Cyclops' relationship kind of got built, and the first step in his foray as being an X-Men. And that's kind of a cool little moment. I like that nod back to the older stuff. It's a very refreshing sight and type of imagery. Just young Cyclops going like, "Oh, these glasses, they really work. Oh my gosh, Charles."
Yeah, and Hickman's been kind of doing this throughout House of X and Powers of X too, where he's been nodding at this older Cyclops, this older version of Cyclops that we once knew.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of repair work. Like he's mending the old wounds of the previous generation, the Dark Years Cyclops, as he's been come to know. The one that is not quite the Cyclops that we all were enjoying back in the day. He's now getting a return to the old format of Cyclops, where he's a lot more of a Boy Scout for the mutants and a lot more noble of a leader and way less angsty. It's the brand new Cyclops with 90% less angst. Which is great. And like I said, Hickman is really good at like bringing back the older mythos and like appreciating it in a way that feels very genuine. And this is just another one of those examples. And it's a good way to start this. I mean, we're breaking into it with just the stuff we already like and know, and then leading on into the whole mythos that he's now set forth. So he piggybacks off of the original X-Men content using this nice little throwback to get the ground started. And then we transition into a much more modern day situation with what's going on with Cyclops and the mutants in general and the mission that's set forth. So we go back to hitting the ground running, and they're already on another escapade and how they're trying to build what is being seen as Charles's new dream. And you get both original, I guess you could say, iconic leaders of the X-Men side by side right here. we start off with Storm and Cyclops actually beginning their uh their new chapter in their lives. The new X-Men, I guess you could say, cause is now being helmed by them as they're doing this for Charles right here as they begin their mission. And it's nice seeing them fight side by side. It's nice seeing them actually working together because they have this camaraderie and respect for each other that's very ingrained in the X-Men mythos. I mean, they're pretty much the people I typically think of when I think of X-Men leaders. It's either Cyclops or Storm, and
Yeah.
they have a good dialogue here while they're in the middle of their mission, and it's nice to hear them like reference a lot of that older stuff too. Just like we got the nod with Cyclops at the beginning about his glasses, we're now also getting the nice nod to the leadership roles that both Storm and Cyclops have played here. But yeah, I guess let's dissect this part. Let's go into the mission of what they're trying to do and their whole excursion. If you want to take it from here.
Yes, so they're currently on an assault on Orcus, which we kind of alluded to in Powers of X and House of X. We've saw a mission leading up to their assault on Orcus and the Mother Mold in Powers of X, and this seems to be another attack on another base as they're going through. And again, you see this camaraderie between Cyclops and Storm, but then we are met with so many soldiers, and it seems like they're at a standstill. And who are we introduced to?
The one, the only, the great Magneto, the king of entrances, as I like to call it. Magneto never uses a door. Any building he goes into, he just rips the building apart and then reforms it together behind himself. Magneto uses no door. And he has Polaris coming toe and toe with them, so you know they're here for business. And it's a cool approach because you already know that this is a hefty mission. Like they're facing heavy odds going into this. I mean, soldiers are coming out of the woodworks left and right from this Orcus compound, and they're just getting surrounded. And next thing you know, Magneto just shows up with Polaris and turns and changes the tables completely. They're just turned right on their head. And with his imposing presence and like the way he comes in is so classic Magneto. I love it. He comes in and he's literally just ripping this place apart, entering in like
Oh
the
yeah.
building, the military compound and its advanced technology and defenses mean nothing to him, and he's just cutting through it like a hot knife through butter, while sitting here and teaching life lessons to his daughter Polaris. It's like it's so funny. He has this very godlike presence of just like the world is so beneath him as he and his fellow almost godlike mutants are sitting here and just dipping their toes in the water of the world, and he's just like, look here, daughter, look at as we pass through the world and understand these things as we grow around them. And it's just like chaos and like metal. And I like the one of the comments from when he first breaks in and like just like it was that kind of that moment where in Star Wars where just remember Han Solo running up on a bunch of like stormtroopers and then he shoots one and like runs away. But it said with Magneto, it's like he's such an embodying force that like you had that one guard who's
Yeah.
like, oh no, oh fuck, Magneto. Well, I'm done with this shit.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. But that's a good part from there. And then that's quickly done with. Like the issue with the guards and being outnumbered was just like, all
Yeah.
right, Magneto's here. We're moving on. Like the guards are no longer a problem. So we're gonna get back to our main mission and move on with what we came here to do. And that's when you get kind of a nice transition over to like a lot of the scientists and what they're talking about doing and how they feel like they're going to try and deal with the mutants because the guards have taken out. So now it's falling down to Devo, which is that's how his name's spelled. So I'm pronouncing it like
Devo.
Devo. We find the head of Orcus is the 80s band Devo with their one hit wonder whip.
The one hit wonder.
They're whipping up some science, and it's it's interesting because essentially Orcus is like going through some sort of upheaval of like what to do with what they have held captive, because you find out in a little bit that there's a lot more going on in this compound than meets the eye, and there's a lot of more nefarious things that they're doing involving mutantdom and just the mutant population as a whole. And while they're trying to cover their tracks, they're also trying to figure out a way to kind of deal with the mutants now that the guards have been dealt a final blow by Magneto. They're like, what do we do? We're still alive, and we're the last stand between the mutants. So what's going to be our take on all this? And I'll let you take it from here and tell me how you felt about their responses to what to do in this part.
So, in response to that, they unleash a series of fighting gorillas
Well, no, they
onto
take
the world.
they take the mutated gorillas
They
that they've
take the
been working on
mutated
that are evolved
gorillas.
with their own themselves because some of them are the actual
Yeah,
scientists themselves
some
are
of them are
creating gorillas.
scientists. So they unleash this serum onto themselves and turn into gorillas, and then they take an assault on the team, which is easily taken care of. It seems.
Yeah, it was kind of a funny response where they were like, "Well, the mutants are here. They're pretty much godlike. We don't know what to do. They took out the guards. What should we do? Well, let's just mutate into a bunch of gorillas and try and fight them." Like, I get that that's the strength boost, but I mean, it seemed like a lost cause. It's it seemed like they
Yeah.
thought de-evolving was the best way to fight the next step in mutant evolution.
Just take it
We'll
down.
take it down.
Take it down a
We'll
notch.
go savage and old school with it. Maybe that'll work, but that was really pointless. And I just like that face on Magneto where he's just like,
Yeah.
this is foolish.
It's
Like,
true. It
I'll
is
deal with
kind of a
this.
cutaway though, kind of like we saw previously, where it's just like, "Well, I'll take care of him. You go," and then we don't really see what happens.
We just know that Magneto wrecked those dudes, and
Yeah, for
with
sure.
Avengers, because they're like the Reavers or the Purifiers or all the
Mhm.
anti-mutant establishment groups. Like every time Magneto deals with them, he does it with a vengeance. It's always just like, oh, well, I'm gonna treat you guys 10 times worse than you've treated us because I'm out for blood now. You came after the mutants, and that's not how I roll. Like anyone who comes after my people is done with in a very just vicious and graphic way.
Yes.
So probably good thing they cut away because PETA would probably be like, "You can't murder gorilla.
Yeah.
You can't show Magneto just ripping
Why would
gorillas
you do
apart
that?
with just flying blades of metal. How dare you? We're gonna sue you guys."
But we cut away to they walk to another room, and this is the first time we see the flowers of cocoa actually transform into a teleporter right in front of our eyes. Now remember, for humans, the flowers turn into great medicine, but when it's used by a mutant, it becomes a portal, and Storm makes this flower into a portal and then opens up a hatch next to the portal. And what's inside this hatch, Danny?
Well, let's note real quick how she does the portal too.
Oh
Is like the
yes.
whole like thing where she uses her powers in this really condensed way, like really localized way. She makes the soil ready using her lightning. She prepares the ground, and then she creates a like downpour of water from her hand, and then like utilizes all of her elemental abilities to give this perfect environment to grow the portal at a speed that allows it to develop instantly. And it's
Yes.
like I've never seen I probably, it's probably been in the older comics and they've probably shown it as like a little side, but I cannot remember a time where I've seen Storm use her powers in like a way that like makes it seem like, oh, she would be like the greatest gardener ever.
Right? Yes. This is if you ever wanted to know how great Storm is at gardening. And
Oh man, her
yeah.
ability, her green thumb is like off the charts
Yeah.
here. Like, you could tell that she's got some practice in this, and she probably makes some amazing tomatoes and some
Oh
bomb
yeah. Some
cilantro.
heirloom tomatoes. Delicious. Delicious, delicious. But yes. So yeah, she creates the portal and opens this hatch. And what's in this hatch?
We get the reveal. You're talking about the post-human,
The post-human,
the
yes.
post-human, which is actually, I guess, from what we've come to understand, we get this post-human character who is a nod to Hickman's run in the Ultimates, which is the evolutionary people that Reed created, right? The Maker. It's
Yes.
his whole little, because in a sense, Reed in that universe and the whole thing that I feel is like the nice nod to Charles as well is why he kind of looks like, as I commented earlier, he kind of looks like the Maker, Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe. Reed Richards himself created his own like human utopia, like advanced society, but he also like evolved humanity in it and created some sort of post-human species. A lot like how the librarian was talking about how the humans in the future overcame the genetic evolution of mutants by just taking the reins away from nature and doing it themselves. Here we're introduced to a actual post-human who is quite capable with their powers. I believe This is Sway Tempest. Right.
Tempest.
Is it this one of the five that they use? One to control time, or is this someone different?
I don't. Oh, you're talking about the
The
no human,
post-human?
the post-human.
Yeah.
I don't believe this is Tempest. Yeah, this
Is
is
this
just
one of
something.
the
Something.
time controlling mutants though, or the like people they like induct?
You
Or
mean for like the part of the five?
one of the five? Yeah, isn't it?
It's just the same. Years.
I'm not sure because I know that this mutant has like time control powers and they're like displaced in a weird way, and
Right.
that's why the way they use their because like they even write the dialogue unique. Like the caption for the text bubbles is actually like in like
Yeah, inverted.
inverted with the colors, yeah, where the black and the white are reversed, and like even like their skin is like kind of weird and like displaced and translucent ways. But I know that that's a more unique nod to like the character being out of place with time and space, but it's supposed to play a greater importance in the story going forward later on. But right now, we're just introduced to the character for the first time, and it's a very unique thing to see because it's like, what the heck is what would you imagine a time displaced character looking like? And seeing it, it's like a weird thing to explain,
Yeah.
but it's definitely looks like it's out of place and doesn't belong in the normal run of the mill set of things.
Exactly. Yes. So Storm is kind of like confiding in her a little bit, just trying to get her to feel at ease. And essentially, what happens is she bounces, just straight up disappears.
Does like a reverse Terminator and just creates like a temporal bubble and just gone.
Yeah.
All ranting the whole time. I shouldn't be here. This shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't be here. Nothing. Like just crazy talk. Like foreshadowing. There's a lot of weird, strange, like little Easter eggs being laid right here and set out to kind of build tension in the story. And
Yes. Um. Yes, and we don't hear any further from this time displaced human. But we're met with mutants.
the true purpose of this mission. This
Yes.
is the most noblest, and I guess you could say true to the course for X-Men right here. Is this is a mission where they're rescuing mutants who are behind enemy lines and they're being tortured
Yes.
and misused and experimented on. And this is like Charles and Scott for a latter extent. His bread and butter right here. You're coming in and you're rescuing all these mutant children and bringing them back into the fold, coming
And
here to save them so they can become citizens of Krakoa and return home where they belong.
most of them look like Morlocks, or what would be
Oh,
Morlocks
very
too.
Morlock, very
Yeah.
Morlock. I get that, especially in the left side of the panel. You'll notice that there's a lot of like just kind of disfigured looking ins, and you get the girl with the tentacle legs, which is weird. But on the right, as I was commenting to you earlier, there's
Yes.
the two twins that are like holding hands, and then like one is like all like red or all yellow, and the other like golden almost, and then the other one is like almost like a crystal or a silver kind of like
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on with those characters. I hope they play a plot later on because they look
Hopefully.
dope.
I dig them. I dig the idea.
Yeah, that design is just so like just so ambiguous and like ominous. Like it's very even if they look on their face, they look like trouble. But that was an interesting like little like end to the whole thing. Is just oh like this wasn't like the last mission. We're not going into something where it's like we got to kill everyone there. We're gonna destroy this place. We may not come back alive. It's like no, this is what we're doing now. This is business as usual.
Yep.
We are now going to be going around doing a lot of these espionage and excursions to go out and rescue mutants and bring them into the fold. And this is like one of the first big steps.
Yes. And we cut to after that. We go back to Krakoa, and on Krakoa, we're just kind of met with what looks like an infirmary, I guess, of
No, isn't that
sorts.
it's just isn't that like Celia Reyes is like going through? She's like the local doctor who's kind of tied into the X-Men mythos, going back
Yes.
to like when she was originally like a kind of like a protagonist to them, but then she switched sides after she realized the folly of like committing genocide and all that. She was like, "Hey, genocide's the greatest thing." I don't know. Moira's in the background, like, well, sometimes it can be, but
It could be, you know.
you got Destiny watching out for you. You don't know what to do. But she's going through checking over the mutants because they're kind of curious because a lot of these mutants were experimented on, and a lot of them were kind of mess with in a way that could be problematic for the greater society. She's going through giving them kind of a rundown and seeing how they're doing, and you get a lot of dialogue between Scott, Storm, kind of talking about how they made a difference here and that how this is like a bigger step in like what they're trying to do, but this is really just only the beginning. And then you get like a nice another little shot of the weird, the weird. I want to call them the Crystal and Gold twins,
Crystal and Gold, yeah.
which is interesting.
Still holding hands.
Still holding hands. Still holding hands. And then the nice little thing is you get that dope entrance earlier from Magneto is like now getting another a different type of entrance where it's less him coming in as like an embodying force and more coming in as like a like how they had the Mutant Five earlier and the original X-Men when they were resurrected. They kind of rose to a level of like messiahhood or celebrity status. Magneto was at like the top of that totem because when he rolls back, everyone just starts chanting, and it's just like, "Oh, Magneto's back! Magneto, Benjamin Franklin, Magneto, Magneto!" They're just all so excited,
Yeah.
and I like how they draw him here because like the way his like without his helmet on and his hair kind of like over that, he looks almost Superman like. Like, doesn't he have kind
Very
of like
much,
that
yeah.
look?
Yeah.
His face, his chiseled chin, like
His aura
he
too,
looks like
just
the
everything
hero,
about him.
the Superman of the mutant mythos right now. He is Superman to these children. You see them reacting like kind of just falling around him and just having this level of just like sheer joy coming out of just their physical being. And that's a real cool moment because like you feel Magneto is much more significant in this storyline, as well as Apocalypse. Both of them, they've been kind of changed in this storyline and made into more Messiah-like characters in a more benevolent sense and not
Yeah.
a malevolent sense, like a contrast, which is really cool. I like that. I like that Hickman's doing that, and I like that his ability to write for villains is unique in a way where he can get you to sympathize with them, but not only see them as like heroes.
Yes, he did that. He does that a lot. He did that a lot, especially with Doom and his Fantastic Four run. Yeah.
Oh, he's one of the best people to write Doctor Doom, hands down. It's Hickman, easily.
But yes, then we're met with Polaris and Cyclops, and essentially Polaris is still commenting on Magneto more or less, and she's like, it's like he's young again, and he's finally found a path and all this. And what does Scott say here? He's
Well, it's really them kind of continuing the conversation that not only Magneto was starting with Polaris earlier, but the conversation that Scott was having with Storm is that they're really just consolidating the ideas that are being put forth here and embracing the reality of like now we've started something new, something that we can be proud of. We don't really have to feel like we're terrorists or like radicals in the world. That we feel like we're fighting against the whole insurmountable odd of society. We now feel like we have our own place and we're now fighting to keep ourselves intact within our own group, not fighting against the rest of the world. We're just fighting to stand on our own and do our own thing now and being our own people and how that's now going to affect the rest of the world. Whereas they're trying to deal with the way the rest of the world is dealing with them, they no longer care. They're in their own bubble, and the rest of the world has to deal with that kind of fallout. And this is just Cyclops saying, like, I love this. I love that this is the future now. I love that this is the life for mutants, and I'm behind it 100%. I will give my life for it. I am all in. I am ready to do this. I'm ready to take on the new mutant cause, the new mutant way. And I couldn't be any happier to do it. And you see it genuinely in Cyclops. He looks like his physical uh his physical representation and how he manifests his emotions and how he displays himself is clearly on point of being 100% behind this. Like you could tell there's confidence in Cyclops and how he believes in things and just like the little smirks and just the little like ways that they draw his presence. And it's great because it feels like Cyclops is 100% in and he's not broken on the inside or conflicted or he's not that torn Cyclops. He's Cyclops whole and ready
sense,
to embrace the mutants and be a part of something greater.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I'm loving everything they're doing with Cyclops, and I don't even like Cyclops that much, so this is a good thing. It's a good sign
Yeah, it's
that they're
funny,
making
like,
me care.
it's been hard to like Cyclops, and back in the day when, like, I watched the original X-Men animated series, I liked Cyclops, he was one of my favorite characters, because he was, the leader, so it's just like with Ninja Turtles, I liked, like, Leonardo because he was the leader, I was just like, "Yeah, lead him to victory, Leonardo." It's like, "Alright, lead to victory, Cyclops, you got this." And then like his writing just kind of fell apart over the years, and he just turned into a worse and worse character. And now it's like this last line here where he's like totally all in about it and just seems excited.
Yeah.
Seems like the genuine young, ready to take on all odds Captain America version of the mutant Cyclops is back, you know?
Exactly. But we cut to the Orcus Forge, and here we're met with what's his name?
Devo?
Devo. Yes, Devo. Just whip it.
He's whipping up some ideas about dealing with the mutants.
Dealing with the mutants, and what's going on here? We're met with him and Dr. Science Lady.
The classic Dr. Science Lady.
Classic Dr. Science Lady making her appearance once again in the X-Men mythos. And essentially they found a way to reincarnate people. And that's what we get from this conversation, more or less, is that they find a way, specifically Dr. Science Lady finds a way to reincarnate her husband. And this suggests that they now almost the opposing force, if you will, has their own method of reincarnation that
using science in a sense, like
using science. Yeah,
he even starts with a really interesting dialogue with her where he says like, hey, I was born blind, like you don't understand, like technology allows us to overcome all of our barriers. This is a really interesting thing here to note, not only for comics but just in society. Like think about it, there are certain things that people are deaf and people can't even talk, like they're like really unique disabilities and barriers that he is highlighting here, not only as a character in Hickman's story, but Hickman himself through writing through this character. He's pointing out to us that there is a precipice that is right in front of us where we can overcome the chains of our human limitations, and we can rise up and become something greater, something more unique. And it's really highlighted here by the fact that he's like, well, I was born blind, but look at me now, like I can see in infrared, like I can see in color spectrums that the normal human eyes couldn't even begin to attain. And using that kind of dialogue, he moves on from there to illustrate saying, like, that was me overcoming the limitations of my disability. Death in itself is just another limitation, another disability, another roadblock. And we have now figured out a way to use technology to overcome that too. But I feel like in mutant sense, it's more of a resurrection by cloning.
yeah,
And this one feels like it's more of like Frankenstein science bringing back someone.
yeah, definitely.
And it's not as polished or pretty, and it seems like it's going to end really bad for them and probably other people involved as well as the mutants. But we'll see where that plays out.
Never ended well. I mean, just look at like the Weapons Plus or
Yeah.
program and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, the weird Frankenstein creatures they've thrown out of that to fight other mutants. And
Yeah. Yeah. So replication has never been a strong suit, but after that, we cut to
Casa de Summers.
Casa de Summers, the Summers house. We are on the moon. Cut to the moon.
Yeah.
And this is a weird moment. And we're met with
Corsair.
Corsair. And what happened last time we met Corsair?
Did he show up in House of X?
He did for a second.
Yeah, he was there for like I couldn't even remember. It was so passing and like non-ancillary to the whole of the plot. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
And I keep forgetting that he was even alive because he had been dead for so long.
Right.
As I had commented earlier when we were talking about it. And I don't even really think like a lot of the characters like that are in this were really in House of X, like the other Summers, like Alex. Oh gosh, not even at all like referencing Vulcan. Like he didn't show up at all in House of X. And this is actually relatively right after this is when you get like the reveal of a lot of the original Summers family coming together again for the first time. And we're brought with a nice little lead in by Scott talking with his father about what's going on, and his father still having some reservations about this kind of concept of what the mutants are doing and their greater thing, because Corsair in his whole is like he's like I guess you could say tried and true pirate or rebel.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the establishment in any way, shape, or form, even if it's for a greater cause. He's always just like, we should all just be lone guns going around taking on the universe day by day.
Yeah, he kind of sees this as an isolationist approach too. He's all like, yo, you're just being very nationalistic, very isolationistic, people see that as a way to like as you're trying to like either prepare for war or you're trying to do something to blockade yourself from the rest of the world, and that's also not a good thing.
Yeah, so he says like drawing a line in the sand like this is going to cause problems whether you like it or not, and that the unforeseeable issues and fallout could be something greater than they're ready to deal with. But nonetheless, you can't really shake the new Scott Summers. His dedication and to his new cause is unwaverable in any way, shape, or form. And he's just like, I'm glad to have you back, Dad. Love you, but it's
this,
my life now. I moved out. And you're gonna have to
is,
deal with it.
this is what I do, Dad. This is how I handle it. I don't need you, Dad.
And then we cut to new chef at Casa de Summers, and that's Chef Vulcan
Sith Vulcan.
using his Omega level energy control powers to fry up a mean steak.
Oh, and it's a mean steak.
Oh man, can we take a moment to talk about the character portrayal? So
Sure.
I brought this up earlier when we were talking about how like this issue was kind of weird. Like the first half of the issue felt like an issue one. I definitely agree that the first half of the issue was definitely a good issue one, but this second half felt so bizarre because they portray Vulcan like he's kind of almost like a clone robot version of himself. Like obviously he's a clone because from that, if you can look up the last scene from War of the Kings, like Black Bolt left Vulcan a bloody mess of just body
Oh
parts
yeah.
and blood and goop, and like he's
Goop
done.
everywhere.
Now here he's obviously put back together. Everything seems fine, and what we know from Krakoa and the resurrection system, they resurrected him. But it seems like his mentality and his like approach is different. Like obviously he has no grudge against his brothers or father. He's obviously not so arrogant and dominating about everything and so just I have to be the one in control of everything. He's just very laid back and a part of the scene and like very friendly and playful. And he's kind of almost jokey about his powers, where he's like, look at the greatness of my powers, for I am the master of energy and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Like it's funny, but it's also what a heel turn
What's happening? Yeah.
because it's way different. It's not how they've portrayed him in the past in any way, shape, or form.
Not at
This
all.
almost seems like a fun guy, like to hang out with. Whereas the previous Vulcan was just like, well, this dude's he's broken, he's been through some stuff, and he's kind of a loose cannon. Like one second he might be like okay, and then the next second he's trying to conquer the entire empire that you're a part of. So watch out. But this was a really interesting introduction, and it's nice to also see that played off of like Wolverine. Like I like how Wolverine's there,
Yeah,
just kind of
just hanging out
reacting to it.
there.
It's like, oh wow, yeah, sure, Master Venge. That's great. You know, get that steak ready for me. And
Yeah.
he's like,
He's
"You're
I
gonna
don't
get
care.
rare."
I want a rare. Yeah.
Just I love like Wolverine's like response. You son of a like man, did he like cooked his freaking he cooked his steak here. Oh jeez. And then next we get to transition to another fun character from the Summers lineage. We get Nathaniel Summers, Cable, the young Cable,
Young Cable too.
Cable 2.0, the hip young Cable, because they had to rebrand. They said we're trying to capture the young audience. We need to bring in a younger, more vibrant Cable. There's something that speaks to the youths, the hoots.
The youths, yes, and he's talking with one of the members of the Starjammers, which space pirates.
Oh man,
I'm excited
space
for
pirates
space pirates
and
to
their
be back.
love of like space weaponry, and that's just all
Yeah.
Cable's bread and butter. He's just like, what kind of crazy space guns do you
Yeah.
guys normally deal with? What kind of space weapons do we have? Like, can I see? Can I see what you? Oh, Shiar Tech. Ooh, we don't have any Shiar Tech in the future, but this is really cool. Like, let me play with this. Like, I'll trade you. I've got guns too. It's like Christmas for Cable because
Yeah.
he loves. Cable loves a big new gun that he can break in and play with.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is tried and true to his character. Over the years, his mutant powers have taken a backdoor to his like love for guns. Oh, it's so strange.
Cool. And then what happens after that?
We get some a little bit of introduction to Jean and her day to day life, and
Right.
her just reacting to like the strangeness of the Starjammers and their presence among the other Summers characters. And I guess at this point she is pretty much one of the Summers, even
Yeah.
though the I mean Rachel
Yeah.
would be her daughter, but Cable's not
Right.
her son. That's
No.
Madeline Pryor. And
Priors. Yeah, and that's
for those who
weirdness.
don't know, Madeline Pryor is another
It's the whole
line of nonsense where Sinister was like, well, I'm going to clone Jean.
Clone
And Scott's like,
nonsense.
well, I miss Jean. So this clone Jean, that works for me. And then I'm going to have a kid with clone Jean. And then Apocalypse is going to abduct that kid and infect him with the technovirus and take him to the future. And then that future version is going to age up and then come back. It's like, too mess.
Yeah.
Comics.
It's weird. It's weird. But yeah, and that pretty much wraps up what's happening. More. Oh wait, there's
Well, there's a little nice moment between Hezbollah, which is one of the Starjammers, and with Rachel Gray. So you get like a little bit side note with her and like her kind of being brought into the story as well. You get recognition of like all the Summers characters.
Right.
You brought in not only the daughter, but you also get Havoc
Havoc
brought in.
is back.
So
Yeah.
it's like all the family members.
Just
The
kind of
dad's
getting
there.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, you get not only Havoc and Scott all in one scene, but you get, for some strange reason, there's Vulcan there too with his dad. They're all like, oh, my sons and my dad, and then Grandpa's there, and it's all been there on the dark side of the moon in their weird house where they killed Jean Grey back when she was Dark Phoenix many years ago, and it's just like this weird, strange, like Stepford vibe family.
Yeah.
And then we get the most unnecessary,
Weird, so bizarre
Hickman like infograph yet, and it's like the floor plan and the layout of their house and like their weird base on the moon, which I hope plays a point later on, because right now it's like
it's just like here's my welcome to Cribs.
They've got it's like they've got a hangar with 2 jets, and they've got a rec room, and here's their kitchen, and it's like here's my DVD collection. I've got, for some reason, they also have Scarface. Everyone's got fucking Scarface or DVD collection. And it's really a useless infograph because like they break it all down, and it's like, okay, well, is it gonna get rated at some point, or what's gonna happen? And then the comic ends. And it ended on kind of a weird note, but I really still liked the first part of the comic, and it felt like a good first part. And it felt like it had a good connection to the beginning story that Hickman laid out, and it was a good continue from House and Power. But ended kind of on a weird note, but maybe that's just Hickman trying to reestablish all these characters and kind of just smooth out the bad blood and say like, just like with Powers when it ended. Like Powers ended with like Wolverine handing out beers saying everyone's cool, these people no longer have beef. It's like here's an even greater dive into that. Here's the Summers family saying like, we don't have beef, and that's what I took away from this, and I really liked it. But how did you feel as it connected to the greater X-Men plot and the continuation of House of Powers?
Yeah, I thought it was initially the intro was great. The beginning, the mission that they went on was interesting, but other than that, I thought that the whole Summers reunion was kind of bizarre, kind of threw me out there. Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't feel like an issue 1 to me.
Yeah, it felt more like half of an issue 1 and, and half of like an issue 5.
Yeah.
But I mean, aside from that, they kind of close out on a little bit more of a plot of like pushing along what Devo's trying to do in Science Lady, and how they're trying to get their ideas up and going and moving forward. But really, it's all rounding up that and rounding up the reunion of the Summers family, and then moving on. And from here, it starts to get a little more radical, because then you move into Excalibur, Marauders, and all those other things. Then things start to get more focused on groups and how they pop off. And the X-Men story plot becomes a more greater line that ties all those threads together moving forward.
But yes, for sure. I'm excited for what's to come. But that concludes X-Men issue number 1. Next week, we'll talk about Marauders issue number 1. We'll also touch up on X-Men issue number 1, the ending, a little bit more. Talk about Devo, stuff we didn't talk about this issue. We're kind of rushing a little bit today. But we'll touch up on that, and then we'll touch up more on Marauders next week. But until then, this has been Podcast of X. I'm Kyle. This is Danny. We'll catch you next week. The robots are going to kill you.
Yep. Always.
Catch you later. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, we are going back through our classic episodes and uploading them onto YouTube in what we are calling Podcast of X Classics. So be sure to be on the lookout for more classic episodes. And be sure to check out freespeechgeek.com.